Welcome to the SDR Accelerator podcast. According to recent industry data, the average on target earnings for small medium business account executives is actually $4,500 higher per month than that of SDRs. And what's crazy about that is LinkedIn is full of SDRs stuck in their roles for 2, 3, even 4 years. And so my goal is to help SDRs make the jump to an account executive role as fast as possible. And so on this show, I interview successful account executives to uncover how they made the leap from SDR to AE, sharing the right moves to make, and even the things to avoid, all to help you land that promotion in under 18 months. And for today, we're diving into a success story with Connor Burris. He was an SDR at Nextiva for just 7 months before becoming an account executive there. And since then, he's made the jump to Dialpad, where he's now an SMB AE. How's it going today, Connor?
Good, man. Thanks for having me on.
Sure thing. Appreciate you coming on. Just to kick things off, I'm curious, what made you get into tech sales?
Yeah, so I used to make custom suits and a living while I was going through college. And the reason that I was doing that is my dad works in sales, and I knew I wanted to be, in some sort of a business related occupation, most likely sales. But my dad told me that's a good place to network and meet people from all different walks of life and see what you like. And through all the different people that I met, from lawyers to bankers to salesmen of all sorts of different products, I really started leaning towards the tech sales, because everyone that I'd met that was doing it was not only making a lot of good money, but a lot of them seemed to love their everything around the job, as far as the benefits that they got, the cool things they got to do, company wide, the lifestyle, or a lot of it's work from home or hybrid and whatnot. The flexibility of it is awesome. The career growth is great. And the lateralism as well. You don't have to be an AE or an SDR forever. You can jump ship to customer success or in client sales or whatever it may be. And so that really intrigued me, specifically because it kind of checked all the boxes that I had there.
hmm
So
Yeah, it
yeah.
makes sense. I had a similar thing. I used to be in healthcare, and I'd have people come in and who were like in sales, and definitely like just through meeting people and seeing the lifestyle that they had, that was kind of what interested me.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, just real quick, I know you said you're from California before we started this. Did were you doing the custom suits in California, and then
Yeah.
where was Nextiva at?
So I was doing that in California, and then I moved out here to Arizona for friends and a new job with a higher end clientele and a higher end, menswear shop,
Hmm.
and just to get out and kind of live on my own for a while I was deciding what I want to do. I ended up going to GCU as well about a few months after moving here. So I finished my bachelor's, and then yeah, Nextiva is in Scottsdale. So after about a year and a half, or maybe two, after about a year and a half of living, or 2 years, after about 2 years living here, is when I got into Nextiva,
Okay,
which is in
cool.
Scottsdale as well.
Gotcha. Well, that clarifies, and I'm gonna get to kind of like your process as an SDR at Nextiva and kind of how you made the jump into an AE there. But I'm also curious, like, just to give me a picture, what drives you today? We hear all the time it's important to have a strong why. I'm curious, like,
Yeah,
what drives you?
the biggest thing that drives me in anything now is when 100%. I have a son, a newborn son. He's 6 months old. So like any, respectable father, that's right there is 99.9% of everything that I, want to do, and the
hmm
reason why I strive to be successful is definitely to provide a good life for him, provide stability for him, and set an example for him, for
hmm
sure.
Yeah, that's great. I actually have a 4.5-month-old son, so I think we're
Oh
similar.
yeah,
But definitely, like, it's interesting. It's like one thing to have internal motivators, and there's another thing to have external motivations where like the people who I love are gonna like starve if if I don't do something good for them.
exactly,
So that really
exactly.
external factors have always, for like all of human history, uh, been pretty powerful motivators.
Yeah, it's always different when before then, of course, it was literally just, I want to go on this trip, and I want to hang
Yeah,
out I want to go golf here instead of here, and I want to do this instead
yeah,
of this. And so that was definitely it. But having the son,
yeah, makes sense.
that's
So if you really want to accelerate your career, then you just need to have lots of children. Is what I'm saying.
Dude, I mean, that's my dad had literally told me. He was
Yeah.
like, once you have kids and you have more of them, each time you have one, you figure out like you figure it out
Yep.
because you realize you got to do more and more and more and more. And so I was like, all right,
Yep.
guess that's like the Philip Rivers way.
Yep. It's out of necessity. 100%. That's great to hear. Okay, now walk me through going through the process of jumping from an SDR to AE at Nextiva. And I know there's a lot to that, but just to break it down, I'm just curious, at what point did you decide you wanted to be an account executive in tech sales? Was it while you were in SDR, or was it before that when you were doing Men's Warehouse and like SDR was the path to that? Yeah, curious about that.
Yeah, so when I was at Nick's Menswear, they had I had one of my clients had introduced me to um, a separate company out here, and I was interviewing with them, but Nextiva kind of slid in my LinkedIn randomly, and so I ended up talking to them, and the first company that I was originally about to go with was like an 18-month to 24-month roadmap before you ever consider for promotion and lower pay. And I was like, eh. And the reviews on Glassdoor and on
Yeah,
RepView weren't
yeah.
necessarily, they were very polarizing. Like people either had a phenomenal experience or a dog shit one. And I was like,
Hmm.
this is extremely alarming. There's no going on here. Um, when I went to my interview at Nextiva, I told them, I was like, look, I've been a sales manager for a 5-store company
Hmm.
here in Arizona for a very high-end clientele.
Hmm.
I work directly for the CFO and the CEO for this business, the small
Hmm.
business out here, and I've drummed up a lot of my own accounts through high-end restaurants, law firms, real estate agencies, and whatnot to get their staff fitted. So I have experience going and finding business, and I didn't have ZoomInfo or LinkedIn Sales Navigator or anything that I had.
Yeah.
Then I just a phone. I had LinkedIn and I had my feet, and that was what I used to go and meet
Mm.
people. Hey, here's what we got here. So I told them at Nextiva, I was like, I've done this the old-fashioned way. If you guys give me all the different software tools you guys are talking about right now, I know that I'll be successful.
That's a great pitch.
And I'm not waiting, a year and a half to two
Uh-huh.
years to get into an AE role. I'll take my experience. I'm going to crush it. And if you guys don't want to work with me as far as accelerating that roadmap, then I'm gonna have to find, someone who will.
Hmm.
Um, so I told them immediately that I wanted to get into an account executive role, and they were God willing, they were willing to work with me as long as I blew it out the water.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
Huh.
knew from the get-go I wanted to be an AE.
That's great. So and just to clarify, you said there was another company that they gave you like 18 to 24 months to AE. But that was
Yeah,
a separate company than Dialpad.
yeah.
Gotcha. And Dialpad was more willing, they liked you and they were more willing to like meet you there. I guess I was gonna ask, I'm curious. Obviously, it sounds like
No,
you're
that
in.
was Nextiva that I ended up going to. Dialpad
Oh,
I went
sorry,
to.
sorry,
Yeah,
sorry. Yes, I mixed that.
but yeah,
Sorry, Nextiva is the one that you negotiate with. But was there a company apart from Nextiva that
yeah.
off that
Zoom Info was the one that had the hard
18 to 20?
roadmap.
Oh,
I was like,
okay,
yeah, this would be cool to work here, but I was like,
gotcha.
about
It's
that.
probably, I imagine Nextiva is probably smaller than. I know I've heard
Yeah, I would
Dialpad.
imagine. And Nextiva's, I think their headcount is like around 1,600 right now. I think Zoom Info's is closer to like 25 or 3,000.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. So great context. I'm curious on that front because I imagine some people listening to this will be like they wouldn't have had prior sales experience. They're coming as a fresh SDR. Now it sounds to me like for Nextiva, just from the experience you had, that gave you a ton of internal confidence that you can sell and blow it out of the water. At Nextiva specifically, do you think if you are someone who's just like grinding and works really hard, can they promote you even if you don't have prior sales experience as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I think and Nextiva also had a 1 year timeline that you had to be an SDR for 1 year and you had to hit 100% to quota. I think 10 out of the 12 months in that year. If you didn't, then you weren't considered for promotion.
Gotcha. But you did
Um,
it in under 10, but you was it just because you had the upfront conversation with them beforehand?
Not only that, but it's a privately owned company, so it's a
Mm.
little bit, it's a big company, but it's still private at the end of the day. Of course, there's rules and regulations and whatnot, but I had, made my intentions clear from the get-go, and I got to become really close with my old boss, Blair Weiss, and he did everything and everything he could to make sure that I was following the success track that I had envisioned for myself. So yeah.
There's some great lessons there that I plan to ask more, but like I kind of want to dive into that. So I'm just thinking for people who are listening to this and want to make that gap as short as possible to jumping into an AE, it sounds like being upfront with your intentions is one thing they can do. The thing is you need some sort of leverage as like a why. And the easiest is prior sales experience, maybe outside of tech sales, but like, maybe something else. If you don't have prior sales experience, you need some other good reason to justify
Yeah.
it. And then having someone you can find that's internally advocating for you is key. And then also probably it's easier to do at a private company than a public company is kind of what I'm hearing.
Yeah, for sure. I would say if you don't have prior sales experience, and like you're 100% right, a lot of people that are trying to get into tech sales or B2B sales in general, as into an SDR, or BDR related role. If you don't have prior sales experience and you are working in customer service or whatever it may be before then, trying to find, the skills that can, there's skills in something that can relate to from your experience to what you're going to do now, whether that being a people person and charismatic or attention to detail or whatever it may be. I think honing in on those skills to demonstrate value at the front, and then riding on that if and when you do get hired into a role. Those are the only things you can do if you don't have sales experience, is blow it out of the water when you get there, and and make it extremely apparent and be consistent with it too. Everyone says I want to do this when they are interviewing, and my goal is to be here when I'm at this place. But when you are at a company, you have to keep, obviously you got to figure out who pulls the strings there.
Yep.
But you need to figure out what the exact process is to make that jump, and then you need to be consistent about it and have conversations about it with people that can make those decisions. For my example, I would talk to sales leaders within our account executive side, on directors and managers both, and say, here's what I've been doing. What can I learn, or what can I do, or how much more do I need to do to for you guys to be confident that I can jump into this. And same thing with my own boss. I was like, I need you to, what else can I do? What else can I do? Can you help me get ready? Can you help me get ready? And that was constant. Once a week I was meeting with them.
That's actually incredibly powerful advice, because numbers matter, but at the end of the day, it's people making decisions.
100%.
And so,
It's people liking people as well. If you
yeah,
can be you can be a top performer, but I'm sure you have experience too. There's plenty of times where you'll work somewhere, and the top performer is nobody you want to hang out with outside of work, because you just don't like that person.
Being likable is that's great. So to make this actionable, like just to really get specific, like what tied, you mentioned generally, but like what are the right people to meet with, who are going to be this will probably vary from company to company, but was it like, when you should think about the most important people to meet with, is it, or to basically win their favor, it's probably going to be your direct manager, obviously, because they'll advocate for you. But then for the role you want, is it the hiring managers of the next role, basically?
For sure. The way that I went about it, and the way I think it's best to go about it, is to obviously consult with your manager about, where you want to be and how you get there. And then they'll tell you, they work there. They're going to say, you got to talk to the so-and-so, and make yourself known, or start planting that seed with them that you want to be on their team, or you want to fill an open role when the time comes and whatnot, and see what they have to say to you, because they're all going to have different, not requirements, but they're all going to want different, basically, foundations to work with, so they can mold you into the kind of salesperson that they want you to be. And so that's how I went about it, is and I'm not throwing an hour or 30 minutes on everyone's calendar once a week.
Yeah.
I'm talking about my one-on-one with my boss that I have weekly. I'm talking to him about it, and then when I'm eating lunch or in the cafeteria or I'm in passing or I'm walking up the stairs or walking to the parking lot to go to the office or whatever, and I see one of those managers or one of those directors, then I'm saying, hey, what's been going on? How was your weekend? Team doing, whatever it may be. So just little seeds here and there constantly, just so you stay fresh in the back of their mind when that time does come.
That makes sense. So it's probably like, it sounds like great advice. So it's like, obviously the bare minimum is like hit your metrics, right? Because that's probably, it's rare to get promoted when like you're not hitting your number. There's exceptions. So it's like, but that's the bare minimum. The next is like obvious, then it's probably having a really close relationship with your manager, and then using his knowledge to figure out like who are the right people, and then like from there it's just making sure it's, whether it's occasional calendar invites or just like showing yourself as likable to them. That's probably the best way to describe the way to. Okay.
Be a people person.
Really helpful.
It's sales. Dude,
100%. Yep.
Yeah.
People. That's the one thing I'm terrified of the future of AI, but the consolation is, I think people, at least for the foreseeable future, don't want to buy from robots.
No.
Okay. I'm just curious, at Nextiva, what was your day-to-day, like what did your day-to-day look like in terms of like what was the actual role? You don't have to go super in depth, but like cold calling, emails, inbound, outbound, how many accounts did you have like per week or quarter or whatever?
So calls, I started out and I was only making about 50 dials a day. And when you're an SDR, BDR, you're not sitting in demos or like you're researching some accounts to some extent based on the intent you may have or whatever tech stack you have that shows you that you have potential cold accounts that you could reach out to. But for the most part, it's mostly I spent about an hour a day coaching with my other teammates, doing role play on conversations over the phone, and then 50 dials a day, which wasn't working. And I was like, okay, you know what? We're gonna up this to 100, and then 100 wasn't working. So I was like, fuck it, let's do 200 and see what happens. And when I started doing 200 dials a day, it was incredibly obviously draining. But I was getting basically one meeting a day, which my goal was like 17 a month. So I was smashing my goal when I started doing that as far as meetings booked. And I didn't really have to worry about anything else because we had all kinds of automated sequences with outreach and everything else that sent automatic emails or sent, I had a LinkedIn template for messaging people. So
did you build those cadences, or was kind of given to you from your manager of like
given to me? So we had a brand new product, basically that Nextiva had purchased this company, and they were going to start selling their product to make it, because it was kind of in line or aligned with the existing product that they had with existing customers they had. And so I was part of that new product team, and so we were all, everything was new to all of us as far as the what we were selling and whatnot. Thankfully, the director that I had worked for Nextiva for like, I think 10 years in total, with some on and off stints here and there, but he was really familiar with the customer space that we had, and yeah, he got us outreach, he built those templates, he built those cadences, he built those sequences, and so he was like, I'm gonna do all the stuff that I'll do everything I can to make it automated and as efficient for you as possible. But at the end of the day, he was also an old school person. He's like, cold call, you're gonna get some some from emails and from LinkedIn, but calling's king. So
just to clarify, and then I guess one more question, like the list, did you have to find your own list, and like was it just like, where's it going certain personas and different accounts? It was like I don't know.
Yeah. So we had a multitude. It's like he would make us, our director would make us lists within Salesforce of like maybe previous customers that hadn't been with Nextiva in like 3 years, or closed loss opportunities, or recycled leads that had reached out for our different product, but you wanted us to reach back out and say, hey, we actually have this now, is something you might be interested in as well. But for the most part, I was going into Zoom Info, and then I had basically a template that set had certain filters on there as far as titles job titles I wanted to pull, personas, or what part of the business segment of the business they might have worked in, so IT or customer service or whatever it may be, and then headcount, intent, word search through the internet, stuff like that. So, and who knows, especially with ZoomInfo, that data can be extremely relevant and extremely new, but it can also be like I don't know the date of it, but I've had so many times where I've called someone, they're like, yeah, I was looking at this 2 years ago, like I'm not looking for it right now. And so you never know how hot the conversation is going to be, because that's what I was ZoomInfo.
Okay. And then I'm just curious, who was two questions on that. Were you given your accounts, were you told, was it a zip code or any size company you can go after? And how did you guys?
Anything.
Okay.
So any mid-market or enterprise account. And then they opened it up after the first quarter. Only me and one of my coworkers, Austin, had hit, but 5 other people weren't even at 50%. So they opened it up to small business to see if we could drum up more business there, because obviously there's a lot more companies in the SMB sector. Sure. And so when we did that, then as a team, we really started. We had a lot more conversations, and then we were a lot more successful, I think, but just as a whole.
Okay, that's great. And then who was the ideal, just the typical title of the person you guys reached out to?
It varied from director of IT to chief information officer or CTO, VP of marketing or VP of customer service, director of customer service, director of marketing, stuff like that.
Okay, it's pretty. That's really helpful. Helps me paint a big picture. And then from those folks, you basically throw them into probably an email cadence that got automated, and then some of them would be generated from Salesforce, which are automated as well, probably in their own separate cadence. And then of all those, you had your separate call cadence where you just blitzed over there. Okay. Did you have an auto dialer or anything like that, or were you just going one by one in outreach?
No, one by one. And I really don't. I mean, I think if you work in if you work in extremely high velocity sales, I think auto dialer can be useful. But if you are not in high velocity sales, I think the auto dialer is one of the worst things you can have as an SDR, because when you have an auto dialer, it's like you're chained to the phone until that is relentless calling. It's nonstop. That's the closest I think a salesperson can get to work to experiencing a day on Wall Street, or at least the whole movie before technology in the 90s, when they were just hooting and hollering in the middle of the trading floor. I don't think it's most sane people. I know myself, I couldn't just sit there and just all day long. You got to have some movement.
Break up them. Yeah, for sure. No, that makes sense. And okay, so you're going basically 200 one by one. That's super.
Yeah. But it's honestly, dude, you get through it a lot quicker than you think. When everything else is automated, if you're not sending manual emails, you're not sending individual LinkedIn messages, you're just copy and pasting, which a lot of that you can do while you're waiting while you're on dial tone and waiting for someone to pick up. Yeah. Honestly, dude, I would get through 150 before lunchtime.
Wow.
And then I'd come back from lunch. I'd have 4 hours left in the day. I would hit my my last 50, and then I would go through and I would do anything else that was on the plate.
Super helpful to paint that picture. And what percentage of your meetings you booked were a call versus email versus LinkedIn?
I would probably say I usually got 2, maybe 3 meetings a month from email and LinkedIn. I would say 95% of the meetings that I booked were all through the phone.
Yeah, that's probably similar to myself, but and I'm sure you've heard this too, but it's you always want to double down on what works. So I think your strategy to go from 50 dials a day to 200 clearly paid off. And I think,
it's people don't like hearing that, because it's no one. I mean, it's not I didn't go to work and I was every day and be like, fuck yeah, I'm gonna hit $200 a day. I
Yeah.
can't wait to do that again. Like it's not the funnest thing ever, but if from a long-term perspective, I'm like, I know that 50 is not doing it right now,
Yeah.
and 100 wasn't doing it either. So I'm like, if I do 200, at
Yeah.
some point, something's got to stick. Like you
Yeah.
got to you'll get a fish at some point.
Yeah.
And people say all the time on LinkedIn. I see it all the time. People on LinkedIn are like, you shouldn't increase activity if you're not booking meetings as an SDR, and I just don't agree with that. I think you should try it before you look at anything else or start
Yeah.
evaluating what else you can change. But that's
Yep.
just me.
I think, yeah, more volume first is what I've heard even from some of like the entrepreneurs I follow, apart from just like sales, like, but starting businesses, like more volume because you're really not good at what you do. And once you increase the volume, then you can iterate from there. And
100%.
to your point, like if you had 4x the emails, you wouldn't have hit your quota. And if you had 4x the LinkedIn, you wouldn't have,
100%.
and you 4x the call. So doubling or quadrupling down on where you're having success is another, I think, actionable tip
Absolutely.
of things that are helpful. For what was it, I guess you mentioned it, but like just to clarify, the actual process you needed to go through at Nextiva to promote was what you needed to be like hitting your quota 10 of the 12 months, or I guess for you
Yeah, I can't
specifically.
remember if it was 9 or 10, but it was 9 or 10 months out of a 12-month period. Your first year as an SDR, you had to be an SDR for a year. That was a requirement.
Okay, and then but you just obviously through your network were able to
Yeah,
work around that,
dude.
but that wasn't typical. But that's
Yeah,
great.
I mean, I was at like 125 to like 180% to goal every single month. So in the 7 months that I was there, so um, yeah, I was like, I'm beyond ready for this. Let me throw me to the wolves. Let me light this candle, please.
And well, congratulations to you, man. That's impressive. It's like rare to like beat the HR blockers. So
Absolutely, and I know that's the thing though. Like at that point, when I started there, my director had told me if you want to get into this earlier,
hmm
it is privately owned, so we can all there's always if there's a will, there's a way. And
hmm
he had said, he's like, you need to make it so that everyone wants you, not
hmm
just I can't just be me saying this guy's ready to go and he's good.
Yeah,
No, you need to
multi-threading.
get the confidence of everybody.
Like closing a deal, man.
It is. It
Yeah.
is 100%, and that's exactly what. That's why I spent so much time socializing with account executives and their
Yeah.
managers and learning and the product, learning the sales process, learning everything post meeting book. And when that time rolled around, there was a couple of positions. I inquired about it, and the director of sales was like, "Let me see what we can do." And then thank God they worked with me on it.
That's amazing. And I think that is like why I enjoy doing this podcast, because that's something I honestly wasn't even that good at myself. And probably why it took me longer than you even to promote to AE, but that's a super helpful tip. And then I know the focus is like on, jumping from SDR to AE, but I did want to ask one question around, what made the jump, what made you move from Nextiva to Dialpad? Um, yeah.
Yeah, the biggest thing was I found out I was going to be a dad, and when I was an AE for Nextiva for the 7 or so months that I was an AE there, or maybe it was 9 months, can't remember now, but when I was an AE there, I was losing um, deals, and I wasn't necessarily losing them because of myself or my sales methodology. I was losing them a lot of the time because we were lacking in integration with this, or
Mm,
our interface wasn't as clean looking as this, or our analytics was separate from our actual application, whatever it may be. But
hmm
little things like that are developer related
hmm
and product related and not sales related. I was like, I know that I'm not bad at this. I've smashed it when I used to make custom suits. I was
Yeah.
killing it as an SDR. Whatever I need to do to win, I can do to win.
hmm
But I was like, I'm this confident. This I'm losing confidence selling because I'm hearing the competitors my prospects are evaluating alongside at Nextiva, and I'm like, well, if I know that they're a law firm and they need this integration. Once they see it with so and so, they're gonna toss me to the wind and I'm done. Um, And I was like, now that I'm having a kid, I was like, there's no more time. I need to figure.
Yeah.
I need to do something that is
Yep.
working. And so, I researched Dialpad's product. I took a look at their integrations page. I went through the interview process, and I was like, this is a much, much, much better product than Nextiva is.
Mm-hmm.
And it shows. I mean, they're also a privately owned company, but that Dialpad on average over the last 16 years has had like a 27% growth year over year on
Yep.
average, which is crazy for any business,
Mm-hmm.
averagely speaking. So, yeah, the product market fit is much
Yep.
better. The cost can be higher for a Dialpad, which is sometimes why I get close to losing deals now is trying to get the discounting to match Vonage or something that's not as
Yeah.
good. But
Well,
yeah,
that's a great insight, and yeah, I know the CEO rep you just posted an article around like product market fit, and I think I think my opinion, and probably you'd probably agree with this, I'd imagine, is get the AE title, do what you can, grind it out, and then like, and hopefully you start as an SDR with great product market fit, but like really it's wherever you can get that AE title, and then like especially
100%.
when it comes to, because when you're booking meetings, you really actually don't. I'm saying this out loud. You don't need as much product market fit,
No,
but you know when you're closing deals, like that's when product market fit definitely becomes a lot more important.
it is a pretty funny meme that you'll see all the time of
Yeah,
like, of the disconnect between the qualified leads that SDRs book for their AEs and how bad they can be.
yeah,
And I think it's important. Obviously, as an SDR, you don't want to book just bullshit because, and a
yeah,
lot of times companies keep you in check. They don't pay you on a meeting booked. A lot of times they'll
yeah.
pay
Mine
you on
mine
a meeting
didn't.
that,
Yeah,
right. It has to go from discovery to demo at a minimum
yep,
usually in
yep,
order for you to get paid because there has to be some sort of interest there.
yeah.
Um, and I think there's it, and you don't have to know as an SDR the product like the back of your hand either
Hmm.
because you're not the one demoing it and whatnot. But there are definitely typically 5 to 10 check boxes that you need to ask or know on every call to really determine if this is qualified or if this is junk.
Yep, 100%,
So
100%.
yeah,
Okay, for you touched on this, and I know, well, if there's something else to add, that's fine. But like, what did you feel that you did differently than your peers, slash like when others, let's say your manager or others were talking about you, what did they say that you were uniquely good at, especially as an
just
SDR?
I mean just I guess hustling, man. There was like probably 12 SDRs at Nextiva.
Hmm.
Maybe actually when I started, there's probably about 16. But
Hmm.
me and my coworker Austin, really we sat next to each other. We got hired at the same time. We hit it off right off the bat. We were one of my boys. Um, we both pushed he was naturally as competitive as I am as a
Hmm.
person, and so we pushed each other like crazy
Hmm.
because he was the same boat as me. He wanted to get into an AE role. He was a brand new dad as well. So uh, pushing the limits, like
Hmm.
hammering the phone was no one else was doing 200 calls a day. They were doing maybe 50 to 75 at max a day, and that was a direct that when you're doing 2.5 times the amount of calls everyone else is, that's a direct correlation to your meetings booked or the success that you have. And so having him alongside me, basically we raced every day to who could book a meeting
Hmm.
first.
Hmm. So your brand, you basically built a brand as a result of this healthy competition. You built a brand of just being a grinder and a hustler, and that always I think just
100%.
stands out to people. On top of, and then on top of that, you were able to build relationships. So that's a super good insight. Finding people to be competitive with is
You got to find someone to
ultimately,
be.
yeah, iron
It's
sharpens iron.
really hard
Mhm.
if you want to be friends with people you work with, obviously, but it's competition is healthy in
100%.
everything in life, whether it's with work, friendships, um, whatever it may be. You need to have some sort of competition, otherwise you're going to stay stagnant.
Yep.
And when you stay stagnant or when you stay comfortable, nothing changes, and that's
Hmm.
not if that's who you want to be, or if you are where you want to be, then that's perfectly fine. It's
Hmm.
good to be there. But if you are wanting to get that next step or looking towards the future constantly, then you got to have someone to nudge you along while
Yeah.
you're doing the same thing, or experiment with you. So
100%. 100%.
yeah, that's the next, I think, valuable asset to anyone looking to be an SDR is if you do get into break into tech and want to be an SDR, find someone immediately, whether that's everyone always says find a top performer, and that's important because you want to learn the tools and tips that they've had to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
But you definitely want to find a friend quick and make sure that that friend has the same general idea as far as career advancement that you do, so that you guys can push each other and hold each other accountable. It's like going to the gym. You're going to be a lot more dedicated to it if you have a partner or a
Yep.
trainer that's holding you accountable to go to that gym with you every morning.
Yep. 100%. 100%. Almost a couple questions left. If you could go back in time, what would you have done differently as an SDR, if anything? And yeah, and
Um,
if there's nothing, that's fine. What maybe, or I guess that could include joining a different company, which it sounds like that might not be the case, or just as while you're an SDR, what could you have done differently or done sooner?
no, I wouldn't have joined a different company. I don't think I mean, the foundation that I got as far as like learning
Hmm.
tech sales and basically being a full cycle or AE there from the SDR experience that I had there, I wouldn't change where I started at
Hmm.
all. Um, the one thing I would recommend is, and this is a very common theme. A lot of SDRs make the jump to AE and have a very tough start because you're no longer, you're not getting paid on meetings booked. Now it's your fucking sale. You have to write it out and uh, and win it. And I think, yes, you can be a people person. You can talk a lot, but specifically in software sales, nothing turns off a prospect more than if you are constantly lacking product knowledge. So I think the biggest thing that I would have done to start and what I would do to go back is spend more time learning the product
Hmm.
uh, with the other AEs, whether that's common questions that you get, FAQs based on industry or persona that you're selling to,
Hmm.
um, but learning that, and
Yeah.
then learning, and then I would also say learning more about your competition. Who are the 3 or 4 biggest
Yeah.
vendors you're going to go against constantly? Because no matter what space you're in, there's always going to be at least 2 or 3 that are going to be
Right
competing
up there
with
with
you
you.
on every single deal. So
Yeah.
how do you differentiate from them? What are your weaknesses to them, and how do you beat them? And if
Hmm.
you figure that out, then you can have a much easier time propping up or teeing up your advantages
Hmm.
and reducing the importance of maybe where you lack or where you're weak.
Hmm. Yeah, that'll also give you more I mean, that'll give you more confidence on calls. It'll
1,000%.
also, like, I mean, especially when you know your product, and it'll help you give a better thing to say on the phones, and then also like who to reach out to as well. Like
Absolutely.
you'll have more conviction in like why someone should actually take a meeting with you, and you
Absolutely.
won't just be blind objection handling of like, come on, like I know you have budget, or some like
Yeah.
really awkward like statement, but you'll actually like be able to give some compelling reasons for someone to
I
take a meeting.
agree, dude. I agree. And that's who I am. Some people can just sell with charisma
Hmm.
and especially like I think a good example of that is a car salesman. A car salesman, you don't have to know shit about the car.
Yeah.
There's the car salesman is a really good one will,
Hmm.
or someone who's successful at their dealership will, is just a people person. They're really
Yeah.
good at taking your eyes off the car. They'll go over
Yeah.
basic things with you, but they don't know the powertrain or you
Hmm.
know all the nitty gritty about it. But in software sales, if you're selling to VP or C-suite or director level people, they don't care about. They've had these conversations hundreds of times with people. They
Hmm.
don't want to hear, as much as they may like your presence on the call.
Yeah.
It's 20% of it.
Yep.
Um, they don't want to be constantly. They don't want to lack confidence that you know what you're talking about, and that confidence, has to come from product knowledge and knowing what you're being comfortable with talking about.
Hmm. Yeah. Super helpful. And if you're listening to this, make sure you learn your product. Last question. What were the highest leverage activities you did as an SDR that basically, actionable tips like from your end that maybe didn't require a ton of time on your end, but had like a massive impact? And if we've chatted about them, that's fine. But I want to make sure we have like a really specific, like actionable thing of like, do
Yeah.
this many times per week,
Yep.
starting today, or start, just something that we can actually go from like the intangible to the tangible.
Yeah. Uh, the I mean, taking a look at um, reviewing your calls, spending a lot more time coaching and reviewing your calls at the forefront until you until you feel a lot of confidence. So no one likes to do role play, especially in your first role. And as an SDR, it can be intimidating, it can be um, annoying, it can be
Yeah, you put
it can
yourself under
feel
the microscope, basically.
100%, 100%. But you have to do that and a lot at the beginning, and it's important to do that, not just at your manager's discretion, but more than that. Say, hey, I would like, I had a check-in every day at the end of for my first month. Every single day for 30 minutes to an hour, I would get into a room with a couple coworkers and my boss, and we would review our calls for the day, and that's the biggest way you'll learn how to overcome objections, and constant repetition. At some point you'll refine it and it'll lead to success. So I would say call reviewing and call coaching is non-negotiable. It's something you should be doing every single day. Role play with other coworkers, talking through it as well. Like, I had a call earlier today, and here's what happened to me. And your coworker will usually say, "Oh man, that sucks. I had a call today too, and he said this, and it threw me for a loop. And I think that's where I lost the call too." Like, bounce it off each other, because you're not gonna have the same objections every day. But if you go through everyone's objections, then you are start to becoming more privy to anything you may or may not have come into contact with yet. So that way you're more prepared for it next time that it does come up, and you can be more successful faster.
Absolutely. I think ironically, you're the second person I've interviewed, and they actually gave the exact same advice. So to me, that's like not a coincidence, and I think that is something I did at my first SDR job a ton as well. And I think a pattern is something to pay attention to. So I think the fact that not just you're saying that, I think it's huge. And so I'm just curious on your end of things. I would imagine this becomes more important, especially early on, because you get used to an objections after a while as an SDR. But I guess two questions is like, what's your recommended frequency of reviewing these things as you start off, and then I guess as you mature as an SDR, would you do less reviews, or would you focus on something different as you are trying to like maybe it'd be more about product knowledge for future stuff, or like I'm just kind of curious a specific if you could give us specific prescription on how often you would do something like this.
I would do it once a day, every month or once a day for your first month, at a minimum. And the biggest reason why I would say that is because, especially if it's your first role as an SDR, you are learning a lot. You're learning, cold calling. You're learning your new day-to-day. You're learning new structures around your own organization. You're meeting new people constantly. Like, it can be intimidating or a lot. It can be your first role in a corporate field that you hopefully want to work in for a long time, and so you don't want to mess it up. Accelerating that place of uncomfortability is what's going to make you successful, and why I think just embracing it. Like, yeah, I'm coming to work today, and this is all new to me, and I'm still learning a lot, and I'm this is kind of a little freaky. But because I know that I'm new to this, because I know that I'm not going to be as good as the other people that have been doing this for a year, because I know, I'm lacking of all this, I should embrace it. And with that being said, I have a director or a manager whose job it is to help me get better at this. I have a manager director whose job it is to help me advance my career. And the way that I'm going to do that is, at a minimum, being good at what I'm doing. You got to start. You get that's like you said, non-negotiable. So with that being said, why would I not do everything I can to just get over it? And at that point in time, like, that's what it is. Like, no one, like I said, no one likes role playing. No one likes listening to their own voice on a previous call and reviewing the manager, especially if you fumbled the call and messed it up. But the quicker that you do that, the quicker you'll be successful, because the quicker you do that, the quicker you'll get answers or solutions or recommendations on how to go about it the next time you get it, and you'll get it again. Everybody does.
100%. Yeah, I think
So,
that makes a lot of sense. What we're gonna say?
I would say, so doing that as opposed to a lot of people that, will get into it and then not take those, actual items on asking for coaching or asking for help or whatever it may be. And instead they'll go and they'll say, well, this, I'm not doing good because this sucks or whatever it may be. Like they'll absorb a victim mentality very quickly. And instead, like, you have to apply yourself at the beginning, and you have to apply yourself hard, even if it's uncomfortable or not fun.
Absolutely. I think it's great advice. I think especially if you're starting off, it sounds like what Connor recommends is once a day, every day for at least the first month, and maybe longer than that until you feel confident. And what I would add too is just is constantly be looking at your weaknesses. If you start getting cold calls, like no one's going to be a perfect SDR. So hopefully daily, but at least I would say once a week, be thinking through like, what am I weak at? And then what steps can I take to actually address those weaknesses? And I would even say like blocking off your calendar to do these things and actually
Absolutely.
So
I had that. So that was the other thing that I would have said is setting up blocks. Like I had a call coaching block every day from 3:30 to 4:30, which was the end of my day.
Wow. Yeah.
And then I had a research block for the first hour of my day, where I would go and I would say, okay, I'm gonna call a bunch through the insurance vertical today, or I'm gonna call through the legal vertical, or the finance vertical, or whatever it may be. So researching how you can help those businesses, or where you win those businesses, or why your product is how they can help those industries, or whatever, organizing like that. But you don't want to get too involved in blocks, because if you don't want to live by a block schedule, you still got to have like I don't know.
Some room to live.
Yeah.
I think there needs to be a balance, and it also depends on personality type. But you definitely need to figure, like, whatever you have to do, figure some way to build it into your process, however it needs to look. But
I agree.
But yeah, well, thank you so much, for your Connor. You've actually given me a ton of insights. If I had to go back to being an SDR, I would definitely. I think for me specifically, like the networking and building a brand is specifically with the hiring managers was a massive takeaway I had. So thank you so much for your insights and tips and for your time, Connor. And we'll talk soon.
Thanks for having me on, Thomas. It was a pleasure today, man.
All right. Talk to you later.
See ya.
Thank you so much for checking out the SDR Accelerator podcast. If you're interested in receiving personalized guidance to help implement what was discussed on the episode, feel free to check out the SDR Accelerator School community. You'll get personalized sessions to help you map out your career and life goals, weekly Q&A sessions, workshops, AI consulting, accountability groups, and access to some of these account executives I'm interviewing, as well as myself. You can check out the link in the description below, and hope to see you soon.